Coming to live here, I was a lot more engaged with what was going on, had a whole different outlook by seeing what a British perspective was, or what was actually portrayed in the media. Although traditionally we would give a lot of charitable donations to various causes, including those going on in Palestine and Israel, again it became difficult for me to say, well, what was genuinely making a difference? In my mind, poverty is one of the worst curses that you can have as a human being living on in our planet, and particularly more so in times of conflict. And I came across this company called Zaytoun, which had only just formed when we first kind of heard about them about 4 or 5 years ago. And this was about 4 solidarity workers that had been out and witnessed what was going on. And they felt that the best way to try and assist the rights of Palestinians was to actually create a market for their produce, which basically they had no ability to get out of Palestine. And so they got their first shipment of oil, which is a prime produce in Palestine, managed to get some into the UK. And they were just trying to find out people who were willing to help by buying it in bulk and then selling it on to friends and colleagues, etc. And that's how we first got involved, really as a very small network. So it was 4 people that started the company, and I thought I'd buy, I think, 12 boxes of oil and left it in the garage, and over a year people bought it off me, and that's just continued. And I still just sell it from my garage because I can't do anything more with it, don't have a shop or anything else. And I think it's my little bit of contribution, but by that exposure I managed to meet a lot of interesting people and heard a lot of interesting opinions, and had the privilege of hearing from very qualified speakers. I don't work for Zaytoun, so I'm not credible enough to talk about them as such, but I'm giving you my personal perspective of what I think is something really useful. I mean, this is the stuff. It's brilliant. I mean, in my mind, it's some of the best olive oil you can ever get. And if you look at the stuff in the shop, you know, like for like, if you're looking for organic, there's no fair trade olive oil apart from Palestinian stuff. You can get other organic oils, and if you go to Waitrose, which is in Meanwood now down the road, you can spend £15 for a bottle of olive oil there. So it shows the spectrum that is there. And I think although BDS campaigns are really useful, from my perspective, trying to actually invest in Palestinians, I think is something that is kind of neglected somewhat in the discussion, probably because there's so many barriers to it. But I think it's a really positive, dignified way of trying to support human beings, who are ultimately human beings. And I think probably the recent problems in the Middle East have highlighted the fact that the leaders don't necessarily represent what people's aspirations are. And I think this is one way in which that can happen. I just want to read out a couple of things. It's just an excerpt of one from one of the UN papers in 2008 about the importance of the Palestinian harvest. I'm sorry it's so kind of late in the afternoon and people are probably wanting to get out and enjoy the last bit of the weather, but I'll try and be quick. Olives are a century-old mainstay of the Palestinian economy, with the soil and climate producing some of the world's highest quality olive oil. The olive is also symbolic of Palestinians' roots in and attachment to the land. Some 45% of agricultural land is planted with an estimated 10 million olive trees, with the potential to produce 32,000 to 35,000 metric tons of oil. Approximately 93% of the olive harvest is used for olive oil, and the remainder for pickles, table olives and soap. Up to 100,000 families depend on the olive harvest for their livelihoods to some extent. The vast majority of the harvest is consumed domestically, with a small amount exported abroad, principally to Jordan, with an increasing interest and demand for international organic and free and fair trade markets. This year, so that would be 2006-2007, the olive industry promises to contribute over $123 million to the fragile West Bank economy. So it shows what an important pillar of the economy it is for the West Bank and Palestinians in general. And this constitutes 18% of total agricultural production. However, the movement restrictions and the obstacles imposed by the Israeli Defense Forces, which reduce access to land and markets, the barrier which separates many farmers from their olive groves, the closure of the Gaza Strip crossings, and the increasing attacks and destruction by Israeli settlers against the olive trees and the farmers combined raise concerns about the potential success of each harvest season. And this is not including climate change, irrigation, etc., it's just purely by the political nature of the conflict. So again, I think it just demonstrates what a beautiful but a core principle of trade and aid that olive oil could be. And it means simply kind of demanding it in our stores where we can. I mean, I've been down to Waitrose a number of times and asked for it to be looked at. The answer's always been no. But perhaps if we reach that critical mass and that awareness, who knows, that might actually have a positive impact. I think the same idea that BDS is going to take 5, 10, who knows how many years. I think likewise investment and support for community endeavours will also take that amount of time. But it might also support political change within Palestine when they see there's actually other alternatives to improving livelihoods rather than just from a boycott perspective or from a resistance perspective. There's kind of a more legitimate and honourable way to do this. One other short excerpt from the perspective of a farmer. Her name is Bassema Bassalat. She's a Palestinian mother of 4, as well as an olive and za'atar producer. Za'atar is like a mixed herb kind of spice mix, which is really tasty. Not that I'm trying to sell this stuff. She lives in Haja village with her farmer husband and an extended family. She is also a trained architect. She says women are the best at multitasking. In 2004, she co-founded the Women's Development Association in Haja to help train women to become economically independent and bring much needed income to their families. Partnering with companies like Zaytoun enables the women to learn about the overseas markets for their produce. It's not simply about sales, however. For these women, as for many others in Palestine, their contribution to their community is growing ever more important as Palestinian society and economy evolves under occupation. Through fair trading, their product sales to UK customers, the women enable them to undertake further training and perhaps to develop their produce to qualify for international fair trade and organic certification. Palestinian women follow their ancestors' ways in preparing the traditional foods of za'atar, which is a mix of thyme, toasted sesame seeds and sumac, as well as maftoul, which is Palestinian couscous. In addition to the olive harvest, which is gathered by the whole family, these delicious foods are a staple of their Palestinian diet, and the women are delighted now to be able to offer it to their customers in faraway lands. She says she's proud of her heritage. My favourite recipes use za'atar. I plant the herbs in my land, watch them growing, and mill them from my own kitchen. And she knows that in the following of her grandmother's footsteps, she's providing for her family and her community. At the same time, her own family's land is facing theft from nearby settlements. 20 dunams, which is not quite an acreage, but kind of a quantity of land. 20 dunams of her own olive grove is no longer accessible due to illegal building of the settlements. This loss affects not only her ability to provide food and income, but her family's whole way of life. To give you an example from her little cooperative that she set up, there's 25 members involved, 25 other families involved in that little cooperative, and that then controls 500 quantities of land. So it's kind of filtered down to affect every single family that's involved in this process, and we've already said how integral olives and olive oils are for them. So I think as kind of an add-on, I don't mean to kind of go on the bandwagon as such, but I do think olive oil is integral. It's something that we can do quite easily within the UK to try and support that cause. And I just want to read one last passage from me, and this is from a book that's important to me, which is the Quran. But I think it's a very beautiful passage, and it's not preaching or anything, so just bear with me. It says, Allah, which is God, is the light of the heavens and the earth. This parable of his light is as if there was a niche, and within that niche there was a lamp. And the lamp is in a glass, and the glass as if it is a brilliant star, lit from the blessed tree, an olive, neither of the east nor of the west. It gets its sun rays only in the afternoon, but it would glow and continue glowing as if no fire had touched it. So for me, that last passage about the beauty of the olive oil, and if you ever look at it, it's beautifully green and just glows. And I think that parable always connects me with this idea of it's such an amazing land which we have to have hope for and try to support to move forward. I'm going to have to nip off, I'm afraid, but thank you so much for giving me the time to talk. And Christina and Andy and Garth, I'm sure, can talk in